Imagine trying to command a massive decentralized army where your absolute only method of communication is a blindfolded carrier pigeon.
Right.
And while on top of that, the enemy is actively hunting the pigeon.
Which is a terrifying way to run an army.
Exactly. I mean, today on the Deep Dive, our mission is to really explore what happens when digital omniscience is just completely stripped away. Like, what happens when it's replaced by brutal biological limits on how fast information can actually move?
Yeah, it completely breaks the standard mold.
It really does. So we are pulling from a really fascinating stack of sources today. We've got the Colony Engine Design Document, which is this highly ambitious simulation engine. We're looking at zoological research on ant stigmergy, and this robotics white paper on self-repairing legged robots.
Yeah, that robotics paper is wild.
It is. And we are going to deconstruct how forcing a simulation to actually obey the physical speed of its agents, how that completely revolutionizes both strategy game design and ultimately autonomous swarm robotics.
Right, because, I mean, if you think about the baseline we're working against here, it's the standard paradigm of real-time strategy games or, city-building simulations.
Sure.
For decades, software architecture in this space has just relied on instantaneous global state. Like, if we look at the background context provided by a massive mod, like mine colonies.
Right, which is huge. I mean, it's got tens of thousands of schematics.
Exactly. Over 1,000 building schematics, automated production chains across, I think, over 30 different NPC jobs. But the underlying architecture there, it relies on this central town hall object.
Okay.
And that town hall instantly queries the inventory of every single agent in the entire network.
Oh, I see. So it just knows.
Yeah, it just knows. If a builder needs, oak planks on a perimeter, the global state is just updated simultaneously.
There's zero latency.
Zero. None at all.
Right. It's like having a God-view satellite.
Exactly.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, if we look at standard creature implementations, like the Ants Unleashed mod.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Yeah, in that one, the biological entity is just reduced to this really simple finite state machine, right? It just has standard RPG mob stats.
Yeah, you spawn hostile fire ants or like a queen boss.
Right, and killing them drops these totally arbitrary crafting components like you get chitin or you get compound eyes so you can craft night vision goggles.
Right, right.
It's fun, but there is no systemic modeling of the colony as this distributed intelligence. The agents are literally just individual targets that have aggro radii.
Right, they're just things to heal with a sword.
Exactly. But the Colony Engine Design Document, it completely rejects both of those approaches. It dismantles the omniscient town hall, and it elevates the individual agent from just being a mindless mob to acting as a literal physical data packet.
Yeah, and that is the central thesis of the calling engine, right?
Yeah.
That information cannot exist independently of the agent carrying it.
Okay, wow.
So if an event occurs on the edge of the simulated territory, the central, the queen, is entirely blind to it, completely blind.
So she has no idea a battle is happening.
None at all. The state change has to be physically encoded into an ant, and then that specific ant has to pathfind all the way back to the queen across a hostile map.
Man, so you have this intentional mechanical latency built right in.
Exactly. I mean, your reinforcements are mathematically delayed by the exact travel time of the agent.
Yeah.
And crucially, if that agent is intercepted and killed along the way, the intelligence just dies with it.
Right. The message is just permanently lost.
Exactly.
So from a systems design perspective, I mean, that has to require a complete decoupling of the local agent state from the global state, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because standard engines usually maintain just a single source of truth. But to simulate this kind of finite information propagation, the Colony Engine implements a dual-state architecture.
Right.
The document outlines what they call a colony blackboard.
The blackboard, yeah.
Yeah, and this isn't the objective truth of the game engine. It's purely this data structure representing the Queena's belief of the world state.
That is such a huge distinction.
Right. It stores the merch map, the guard roster, the food ledger, suspected enemy coordinates. But it's just a belief.
Yeah, and the defining characteristic of that blackboard is that it is absolutely allowed to be catastrophically out of sync with the actual engine state.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because individual ants, they don't have read access to the blackboard while they're out in the field.
Can't just check their Wi-Fi connection.
Right, exactly. An individual ant operates exclusively on what it can detect within its own local spherical sensory radius.
What?
That combined with whatever cached assignment it received the very last time it made physical contact with the queen, or, a designated relay scout.
Okay, so if a scout uncovers this massive nutritional resource out in the wild, the global belief state, the blackboard, remains completely static
Completely unchanged,
until that physical agent successfully walks all the way back and deposits that data.
right? It has to successfully return.
Right.
So since we've established that this God view is completely gone, how do these digital ants actually communicate? Because the bandwidth and the reliability of those communication channels become the literal defining constraints of the whole system.
Right.
The design document establishes 3 distinct signaling channels to handle this state reconciliation, and these map directly to real-world stigmergic communication.
Shijipumergy, right?
Yeah. So let's look at the first one, couriers.
Okay.
This operates essentially as addressed point-to-point packet routing.
Got it. So couriers carry this high-fidelity, multidimensional data payload. So they have exact Cartesian coordinates, specific roster identities, even these deduced cryptographic signatures of enemies.
Yeah, it's incredibly rich data.
But it's a highly lossy channel.
Highly lossy.
Because the data is locked to that single physical agent. So a packet loss is 100% total if the ant gets intercepted.
Right, the pigeon gets shot down.
The pigeon is dead. And furthermore, dedicating an agent to act as a courier, it pulls that unit out of your foraging economy for the entire duration of the round trip.
Exactly.
So the bandwidth is high, but the resource allocation cost is really significant.
You're spending a full, order of 1 agent allocation just for data transit.
Right. Which naturally necessitates a cheaper broadcast alternative.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the second channel, which is pheromones.
Pheromones, yes.
Now, from a computational standpoint, simulating continuous chemical diffusion on a discrete voxel grid like Minecraft is traditionally a nightmare for tick rate optimization.
Oh, it melts processors.
Right. So the engine handles this by treating pheromones as decaying vector fields. So they are low bandwidth, they are persistent, and they are highly leaky.
Very leaky.
Right. The cost to lay them is computationally and economically negligible, but the strategic exposure is massive because your enemies can read those vector gradients.
Yeah, and the document is very careful to ensure these aren't just simple gradients pointing toward a food source. They are implemented as type trails, so they carry semantic tags. The engine assigns at least 4 enumerations for these tags.
Okay, what are they?
So you have a recruit to battle vector, you have a food route, you have a home vector for, nest word orientation, and then you have a danger or no entry mark.
Wait, a no entry mark?
Yeah.
That is a brilliant intersection of zoology and pathfinding optimization. Because for the zoologists listening, this mirrors the behavior of pharaoh ants, right? They utilize negative trails to flag unrewarding or dangerous branches.
Exactly. They tell the colony, don't go down here.
Right. And for the simulation modelers, implementing a negative A-star pathfinding weight locally, it allows a colony to route around a hazard, like a lava flow or a known enemy ambush, without having to wait for a courier to run all the way back and update the central blackboard.
Right. The hazard intelligence becomes distributed in the environment itself.
That is so cool.
It is, which leads the third channel, right?
Yeah.
And this one is designed specifically to bypass the vulnerabilities of the first 2. Because if couriers are subject to total packet loss and pheromones are readable by enemy intelligence, a colony absolutely requires an air-gapped, highly reliable protocol.
Like a secure line.
Exactly. So the engine implements tandem running.
Tandem running.
Now, this represents an escorted channel. So a scout physically leads a squad to a coordinate, like by the hand.
Oh, wow.
It leaves 0 persistent state in the voxel environment, which renders it perfectly private.
But the economic cost to your throughput must be staggering.
It's massive.
Because you are completely tying up a scout's processing thread and its physical mobility just to act as a tether for the squad.
Right, they can't do anything else.
So it's less biologically accurate, but the resource management implications there are severe.
Yeah.
And those resource implications become even more critical when we actually analyze why the pheromone channel is so dangerous. Because, like you said, pheromones are broadcast and leaky, which means communication inherently becomes an intelligence war.
Oh, absolutely. The trail network basically acts as a massively distributed attack surface. Right.
Because pheromones in the colony engine, they are not homogeneous. They are generated with randomized compositional chemical signatures that are unique to each colony instance.
Okay, break that down for me.
So let's say a signature consists of a multi-part array. right? A rival colony cannot simply parse an enemy trail on contact. They don't just inherently understand it.
Because it's essentially encrypted.
Exactly. They have to allocate surviving scouts to observe the trail and run a literal deduction algorithm. They have to isolate the signature components through observation and elimination over time.
Oh, man. So it's cryptographic decryption, but modeled through biological behavior.
Yes, and because this deduction process is local to that scout must physically survive the return trip to write that decrypted signature array back to its queen's blackboard.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, you can literally intercept and kill an enemy as decryption progress mid-transit.
If an enemy scout deduces, say, 75% of your chemical signature, and you destroy that agent on its way home, that data is flushed from the simulation entirely.
So you were literally killing their intelligence.
Exactly. But the incentive for them to crack that signature is monumental because it enables biological spoofing.
Spoofing, right.
The design document utilizes this to weaponize a phenomenon known as the army ant circular mill.
Okay, the circular mill. I've seen videos of this, right? The death spiral.
Yes. In standard AI pathfinding, right, a closed-loop trajectory is a catastrophic failure state.
Oh, yeah, it's an infinite loop. Developers aggressively patch that out.
Right. But in nature, pure trail following can occasionally trap real ants in a death spiral. They just follow the pheromones of the ant immediately ahead of them until they literally starve to death.
It's horrifying to watch.
It is. But the genius here is taking that classic pathfinding glitch and turning it into a valid, inducible exploit within the game mechanics.
Oh, wow. So if a rival colony successfully deduces your compositional signature, they can dispatch infiltrators deep into your logistical network to forge that exact signature.
They physically write a closed-loop vector field across one of your high-traffic foraging corridors.
Oh, my God. That's just evil.
It is. Your agents hit the loop, they parse it as a valid instruction from their own blackboard, and they trap themselves in an endless march.
That is basically a cybersecurity routing loop attack, but with ants.
Exactly. And it perfectly mirrors the parasitic behavior of Polyergus ants.
Right.
And other myrmecophiles that forge colony odors to, manipulate host behaviors.
That is incredible. But wait, introducing a trap that permanently effectively deletes enemy agents from the board, doesn't that risk breaking the mechanical balance of the simulation?
Oh, totally.
Because if the spoofing exploit is too powerful, the dominant meta just becomes spamming forged loops everywhere.
Right, it would ruin the game. The engine absolutely requires a countermeasure, and it derives this from the desert ant cataglyphis.
Cataglyphis. Okay, so dead reckoning or path integration.
Yes.
Now, speaking as someone familiar with game design, calculating continuous path integration for thousands of agents is incredibly expensive.
It's brutal on the CPU.
Right, because it requires maintaining a running net displacement vector in every single agent's local memory, continuously updated against its travel distance, whereas gradient descent, just following the strongest pheromone, is computationally super cheap.
Exactly. So path integration requires active investment from the player. The simulation treats it as an unlockable capability that demands resource allocation.
I see. So it's not on by default.
No. If a colony has invested in this capability, their agents maintain that internal home vector.
Okay.
So when they get caught in a forged circular mill, the agent's logic compares its accumulating travel distance against its static net displacement.
Oh, that's smart.
Right. So when the divergence between those two values crosses a specific threshold, the agent realizes, hey, wait a minute, I'm going in circles.
It recognizes the spoofing attack.
It breaks the vector following loop, and it utilizes its internal dead reckoning to escape back home.
That is amazing. It transforms mill resistance from just being some passive statistical buff into an active resource-driven architectural choice.
Exactly.
And that constant tension, between resource allocation and survival, that actually scales down into the actual geometry of the simulation itself.
Oh, heavily.
Because if the intelligence war dictates strategy on the surface, the physical architecture completely dictates survival underground.
Right. And the document is remarkably rigorous about the underlying economics driving that architecture.
Okay.
Everything hinges on a meticulously balanced food pool.
The food economy.
Yeah, the mathematical loop is highly constrained. So forager throughput determines your caloric surplus. That surplus dictates the maximum integer size of your guard roster.
Makes sense.
The guard roster dictates the spatial volume of territory the colony can physically secure. And that secure territory dictates the availability of new foraging routes.
It is a strictly closed loop.
A perfectly closed loop. Because of this, the design document mandates that combat must always result in a net negative caloric yield.
Net negative,
Oh,
okay,
right.
which is a crucial distinction for the simulation modelers listening. Because if you allow the corpse yield so, the caloric value retrieved from eating enemy dead.
Right.
If you allow that to exceed the lifetime tick rate consumption of the agent that fought for it, you accidentally design a perpetual motion machine.
Exactly. The economy ceases to function as a constraint.
Right, and perpetual war just becomes the only mathematically viable strategy. You just farm your enemies.
Exactly. By ensuring a low corpse yield, war remains a desperate, mathematically suboptimal triage maneuver rather than a farming technique.
That makes total sense. But what do they do with the corpses then?
Well, the treatment of those corpses introduces this really elegant piece of logic that bridges chemistry and labor scheduling.
Okay.
The simulation models necrophoresis, which is the act of hauling dead units to a refuse midden like a graveyard.
Right.
In zoology, this behavior is triggered by the accumulation of oleic acid.
Oleic acid, right.
Yeah.
Which releases on a delay after cell death.
Exactly. So the developer translates this chemical delay into a discrete integer timer assigned to the corpse entity in the game.
Oh, that is clever. So this means a fresh corpse lacks the chemical tag of death.
Correct. So if your agents secure a fresh enemy corpse on the surface before that timer expires, the behavior tree processes it as a high-priority foraging and looting task.
They bring it in for food.
Right. But if an allied agent dies deep inside the nest structure and that integer timer runs out,
Oh, no.
the entity state shifts. It becomes a localized chemical hazard.
Like a literal ticking time bomb of priority interrupts.
Yes. That state shift triggers a massive priority interrupt in the colony's labor scheduling.
Wow.
Sanitation tasks suddenly override foraging and excavation. Workers have to abandon the economic loop to haul the hazard out of the network.
Oh, a single mechanical action, just hauling an entity, is governed by entirely different logic branches depending purely on that specific oleic acid timer and the geographic coordinates of the body.
Exactly. And the geometry of those coordinates plays a massive role in combat resolution too, specifically regarding tunnel frontage.
Tunnel frontage. Okay, yeah, because in an open field simulation, numerical superiority usually just dictates the outcome via surround mechanics, right? You just swarm them.
Right. But in a one-block-wide voxel environment like Minecraft, the physics engine enforces strict geometric choke points.
Oh, absolutely.
So the engine introduces a combat pairing mechanic to model this realistically.
How does that work?
Two allied agents can occupy a single voxel tile simultaneously. They bond to double their defensive frontage.
Okay, so they pool their strike rate and their health pool.
Right, maximizing the defensive density of a narrow corridor.
It's like the Spartans at Thermopylae.
Yes, exactly like that. However, the state machine dictates that this buff is strictly contingent on both agents engaging the same target.
Okay.
If one agent is destroyed, the survivor is immediately inflicted with an overextended state penalty.
Oh, man. So it severely degrades its combat modifiers.
Oh, severely. Which introduces a really fascinating heuristic for the pathfinding weights.
Because the attacker's AI is now incentivized to execute focus fire logic.
Right, to break the pairing and trigger that overextended penalty.
And for the defending player, it forces a deep architectural compromise.
Oh, absolutely. Do you excavate narrow one-block corridors to maximize that pairing mechanic and create impenetrable choke points?
Knowing it will severely throttle your own logistical throughput.
Exactly. Or do you excavate wide multi-block chambers to optimize your supply chains, knowing you are sacrificing that geometric defensibility?
That is a brutal choice.
It is. And the complexity of managing these spatial constraints makes the developer's decision not to build a proprietary village schematic system entirely logical.
Oh, right, because earlier we mentioned mine colonies.
Yeah. The design document actively avoids reinventing the wheel regarding complex multi-block construction.
Which makes sense. I mean, given that the background context of mine colonies already provides over 10,000 robust, community-tested schematics, and all the jigsaw assembly logic required to place them block by block. So the colony engine opts for cross-mod faction hooks instead.
It's honestly a masterclass in scope management.
Yeah, you just expose the necessary APIs so the ant agents can interface with the mine colony's assembly system. They utilize human-style architectural blueprints, but the construction is executed by distributed biological agents rather than those centralized NPCs.
Exactly. But This brings us to a massive, glaring technical wall.
The processing power.
The processing power. We're talking about tens of thousands of individual agents.
Right. They're maintaining local dead reckoning vectors. They are querying typed pheromone fields, calculating oleic acid integer timers.
Running combat pairing state machines, assembling multi-block structures.
A standard Java environment will start dropping ticks if you put like 200 chickens in a rendered chunk.
Right. Simulating tens of thousands of these complex agents would instantly halt a standard processor. It would just crash.
So how do they get around that?
Well, the document acknowledges this by referencing the failure state of earlier attempts. Specifically, they cite the Ant Arsonist mod.
Oh, Ant Arsonist. I remember that.
Yeah. That project attempted to bypass processing limits by enforcing a hard, arbitrary cap of 20 agents per colony.
20? That's not a colony.
No. And they physically leashed their pathfinding coordinates to the Queen's location to prevent them from wandering into unloaded memory chunks.
Right, but a 20-agent cap completely invalidates the distributed intelligence model we've been talking about. You cannot simulate a swarm with 20 nodes.
No, you can't. So to solve this, the Colony Engine implements a really aggressive level of detail, or LOD virtualization architecture.
Okay, LOD virtualization. Walk me through that.
So any agent that crosses the threshold outside of the player's immediate render distance ceases to exist as a physical kinematic entity in the world space.
Okay.
They are demoted from the 3D physics engine entirely and serialized into abstract statistical rows in a lightweight background database. The continuous pathfinding and collision detection are totally suspended. Instead, a forager assigned to a known pheromone route is calculated via probability distribution.
I see. So it yields a specific caloric value per, say, m ticks, subjected to a background statistical probability of interception or death.
Exactly. And the exact moment the player's render distance intersects their calculated coordinates again, the database row is promoted back into a fully instantiated pathfinding 3D entity.
That sounds incredibly smooth, but if I'm a simulation modeler listening to this, I have to immediately challenge the integrity of that abstraction.
Sure, yeah.
Because if the agents outside my render distance are just statistical probability distributions operating on a spreadsheet, how do we prove the simulation isn't hallucinating?
That is the exact question they had to answer.
Like, how do you ensure that the lightweight math perfectly mirrors what the agents would actually achieve if the kinematics and collision detection were fully rendered?
Right. And that requirement for absolute verification is the reason the core of this project is built on strict determinism.
Okay.
The Minecraft modification is merely the presentation layer. The true engine is a headless, standalone simulator constructed entirely from scratch.
A headless engine.
Yes. It utilizes a fixed-step tick loop and relies strictly on fixed-point mathematics.
Which is absolutely essential because Java's native floating point calculations are notoriously non-deterministic across different hardware architectures.
Exactly.
If you use standard floats, round-off errors will cause the simulation state to diverge over time, especially going from by86 to ARM architectures.
Precisely. So by wrapping the logic in fixed-point math and totally eliminating any unseeded random number generation or, hash-ordered collections, the standalone core functions as an oracle.
An oracle.
Right. If you provided a specific initial seed and an ordered log of input events, it will calculate the exact same outcome down to the exact byte every single execution.
Oh, I see where this is going. So the developer uses this oracle to validate the LOD virtualization model.
You nailed it. You run the headless oracle at maximum fidelity. So every single agent is fully simulated simultaneously, which, consumes massive server compute.
Right.
Then you run the virtualized Minecraft layer using the identical feed and input log.
And you diff the two-state trajectories over time.
Exactly. If the statistical abstraction is mathematically sound, the outputs remain completely identical. If there is even a slight divergence, your probability distributions in the database are flawed and they require tuning.
That is rigorous. I mean, the rigor of that deterministic framework is highly unusual for just game design.
It is. But it becomes entirely justified when we transition to the final and really the most significant objective of the Colony Engine.
Okay.
The strict enforcement of finite communication, the spatial geometry, the deterministic core. None of this is ultimately designed to entertain players.
Wait, really?
Yeah. The entire architecture is constructed as a low-cost, high-fidelity test bed for autonomous swarm robotics.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we are looking at a system designed to figure out the bandwidth budget and computational architecture for decentralized robotic swarms.
Exactly.
For things operating in environments like deep space or suboceanic trenches.
Yes. The design document bridges directly into the methodologies outlined in that self-repairing legged robots white paper we mentioned earlier.
Okay, let's dive into that.
So consider a multi-legged autonomous unit operating in a high-latency environment where human telemetry is just impossible. Mars, for example.
Right, a 40-minute round trip for a ping.
Right. The unit sustains catastrophic mechanical damage, say a ruptured actuator or a severed linkage. The unit cannot halt operations to await a central command update.
It has to fix itself.
It must rely on a localized self-model.
So it maintains a kinematic avatar of its own physical structure in its memory.
Yes. When damage is detected, it injects that failure state into its internal simulation.
Okay.
It then utilizes an algorithm like NEAT, so neuroevolution of augmenting topologies,
Right, neat.
to rapidly breed and test thousands of candidate neural networks, basically evolving a compensatory gate within its own internal simulation before executing it on the damaged physical hardware.
That is brilliant.
It is, but the constraint, however, is localized computational power. Evolving thousands of neural topologies in real time requires massive compute.
And a damaged robot might not have the battery or the processor for that.
Exactly. If the damaged unit lacks the onboard processing capacity, the architecture proposes what they call a Beowulf swarm layer.
A Beowulf cluster.
Yes, the injured unit dynamically transitions into a server role. It broadcasts a request for compute cycles. Healthy peers in the immediate vicinity pause their primary directives and donate their processors.
Oh, that's so cool.
They form a distributed ad hoc simulation cluster to process the recovery algorithms for the injured node.
But this brings us right back to the core thesis of the Colony Engine, because standard robotics physics simulators, they idealize data transfer.
They do.
They just assume that if node A requests compute from node B, the packet transfer is instantaneous and guaranteed.
Right, which is never true in the real world.
So by bridging this into the Colony Engine framework, the robotics researchers are forced to confront the brutal reality of finite information propagation.
Exactly. The simulation demands answers to the localized logistics.
Like, given the latency of the required relay hops, how many peers can the injured node actually recruit?
Yes. And what is the mathematical degradation of the recovery algorithm if packet loss occurs during the distributed compute phase?
Oh, because if a peer gets destroyed while it's crunching data, that data is gone.
Exactly. And most importantly, what is the systemic caloric cost, the overall mission impact of those healthy nodes abandoning their primary foraging tasks to act as server nodes?
Right. The simulation forces the engineering to account for the physical cost of communication.
It does. Furthermore, it provides an ingenious solution to one of the most persistent traps in self-modeling robotics.
Jews.
It's detailed in Section 7.1 of the white paper, the discrimination problem.
The discrimination problem. Break that down.
This is the challenge of a unit attempting to distinguish between an internal hardware fault and an external environmental disturbance.
Okay.
So if a robot begins slipping on an icy incline, its internal kinematic predictions are going to fail. The danger is that the self-model assumes an internal actuator is broken,
Oh.
and it begins permanently altering its gait to compensate for a healthy body interacting with a hostile environment.
It essentially cripples itself to solve a problem that doesn't actually exist.
Exactly. It diagnoses a slipped gear when the reality is just a slippery floor.
So how do you resolve that?
Resolving the discrimination problem requires analyzing the persistence and correlation of the error. An internal fault will persist across diverse maneuvers and terrains.
Right.
An environmental disturbance correlates strictly with external conditions. But testing this robustness requires injecting massive amounts of environmental noise into the simulation.
Which is why they use Minecraft.
Yes. By utilizing Minecraft as the presentation layer, the researchers gain access to a highly robust, pre-built library of environmental friction modifiers.
Right, you've got soul sand, ice blocks, honey blocks, fluid dynamics with water and lava.
Exactly. You can inject a theoretical fault vector into the digital ant's internal state machine and simultaneously degrade its external kinematics by routing it across a honey block.
Oh, wow.
You then monitor whether the agent's internal diagnostic logic can successfully isolate the internal fault from the environmental noise under realistic constrained conditions.
That is just a brilliant repurposing of standard voxel mechanics for advanced sensor logic validation.
It really is. The synthesis of these disciplines demonstrates how enforcing a single immutable constraint, the physical speed and vulnerability of information, radically transforms both biological modeling and hardware engineering.
It forces game designers to treat intelligence gathering and communication networks as physical, destructible geometry. And it provides roboticists with a rigorously validated, mathematically sound environment to stress test the economic limits of swarm intelligence before they allocate millions of dollars to physical manufacturing.
Exactly. It is a remarkable piece of cross-disciplinary architecture. But, reading through the synthesis of the biological constraints and the robotic applications, the design document leaves us with a highly provocative concept.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a question that a standard single robot white paper fundamentally cannot ask.
Yeah.
It revolves around the mathematical threshold of triage.
Triage, okay.
If we accept the premise that a highly advanced autonomous swarm possesses the capability to manufacture replacements.
Functionally equivalent to an ant colony raising new larvae.
Exactly. If they could do that, the calculus of recovery changes entirely. There exists a definitive mathematical crossover point where the collective energy and compute cycles required to diagnose, stabilize, and repair a severely damaged unit.
Vastly exceed the cost of simply abandoning it and manufacturing a replacement. Wow. It demands a fundamental philosophical shift in how we approach engineering.
It really does.
Because when humans design multi-million-dollar exploratory rovers, our instinct is to treat every single unit as a precious, irreplaceable asset. We engineer them with overlapping redundancies designed to survive and recover at all costs.
Right, because we think of them as singular heroes.
But the colony engine forces us to look at the cold, systemic math of the food pool. It asks this really chilling question. As our autonomous swarms become more complex and decentralized, do we need to strip away our human bias toward individual survival?
Yeah.
Should we intentionally program our most advanced robotic systems with the brutal biological instinct to simply leave their wounded behind for the greater efficiency of the swarm?
This is a heavy realization.
It really is. Moving from the God view of perfect, indestructible machines down into the dirt where every single packet of data and every single agent is entirely expendable. Something for all of us to mull over. Until next time.